Truck drivers. What's a creepy story you've got from the middle of nowhere? Trucker here. I think the best creepy thing that ever happened to me was I was heading from Tucson as up into Salt Lake City. Well, this was a few years ago, and the main highway had been taken out in a flash flood. Was under construction, so I had to take a weird detour through the mountains in lower Utah. Well, it was getting late, and I was getting tired, so I pulled off onto the shoulder and went to sleep in my bunk. Now this was in the middle of nowhere. Closest town was like 40 miles away, so it is completely pitch black outside once I turn the lights off. Anyway, around 4 AM I wake up because I'm hearing something messing with my truck. Like playing with the air and power cables between my cab and the trailer, which is literally 6 inches from where my head is at but on the outside of the cab. Then I feel something climb onto the landing that's on the back of my truck, and it shakes my whole truck. So I'm guessing something around 200 to 300 pounds was climbing around back there. I'm thinking like a mountain lion or a bear. At this point I'm wide the F awake, and I want to get this thing away from me. So I slam my hand into my cab wall trying to scare whatever is out there. Slam hard enough to really make it loud. I then hear someone, a male, scream bloody murder, and I hear them fall off the back of my truck. I then hear about 15 other people all around my truck yelling. I climb up front, turn on my lights, and illuminate a squad of Army reserves doing their midnight truck march and capture drills. Turns out these guys were supposed to go find an abandoned truck and secure it for their midnight drills. That truck was 3 miles back down the road. They were not expecting me to be sleeping there, and thought I was part of the drill. I'm ex-military, so after explaining I was not part of their test and legit was just there out of coincidence, we laughed it off. They had to radio to their CO and tell him I was there and not have the other squads bother me. Edit. Wow. Thank you for the awards and the likes. Never had this man before. Mayo, imagine the look of horror on their faces when the abandoned truck has something inside it. I posted this somewhere else recently, but it fits better here. I used to deliver hotshot freight across the Great Plains/Minnesota area. One night around 2 AM I was hauling across North Dakota trying to reach Montana by morning. I was delivering a particularly valuable tractor part that a farm desperately needed for the following day. I began to notice some highway hypnosis sneaking up on me, but it didn't really bother me because I'd been through it hundreds of times before. Anyone who has driven across North Dakota knows that it is incredibly flat, like really flat. There also tends to be very straight and long roads. It's somewhat easy to see things on the road that are far away, even at night. I noticed something long on the road, spanning my entire lane, approximately half a mile in front of me. I slowed down a little and prepared to move into the opposite lane, thinking it was some retread off a blown tire. As I got closer I noticed it was 2 people, laying head to toe across the entire lane. I swerved into the other lane, successfully avoiding them, and came to an almost complete stop. But they didn't move, not an inch. I was just about to back up and check on them when I remembered a story that an old graybeard colleague of mine told me. He told me that in certain remote areas, people will lie down in the middle of the road and wait for a car or truck to stop and see what's going on. At that point, the road layers along with whoever else is hiding in the nearby bushes will beat the s out of the driver and steal his vehicle, leaving him in the middle of nowhere. I decided not to back up, and when the 2 people in the road saw me put my truck back in gear and drive away, they both got up and walked toward the shoulder. I called the police and explained what happened, but we were so far away from civilization that I doubt anything came of it. Thanks to that old graybeard, I got to keep my truck, my job, and my teeth. Definitely the right move. Another response on this thread spoke of the same thing happening. Only difference I think was that you didn't run them over, lol. Not sure if this story is creepy, but it's definitely scary. My father was a truck driver in East Africa in the 80s and early 90s. During the years leading up to the Rwandan genocide, my father was passing through Rwanda. He reached a checkpoint and was forcibly removed from his truck at gunpoint. Apparently he looked like he belonged to the Tutsi tribe, and they put him in a cage with other Tutsi prisoners. He tried communicating that he isn't Rwandan, but no one spoke the same language as him. Every night they would take about 5 people from the cage and slaughter them in front of him. After the 3rd night, he saw a man that spoke a little bit of Swahili, which my dad spoke, and told him that he's not Rwandan and showed him his ID. Somehow that guy got him out and he was handed the keys to his truck and was on his way. Jesus, I'm so glad your dad survived, but my heart breaks for the others. I bet he had some major trauma from seeing people killed in front of him. Driving through an abandoned section of Baltimore at 3 in the morning, my CB radio turned itself on and crackled for a bit. Out of nowhere some voice over the radio said in a deep southern drawl, "I ain't got no panties on." I could see up and down the interstate 4 miles and saw not one set of headlights. That was Fred. He just wanted you to know he didn't have no panties on. Honestly, though, I have no idea why or when that started, but I've heard it for over 26 years. Leave the CB on, and you will hear it at least once a day. Always a southern drawl, and always said in a harsh whisper. Driving through rural NM. Bisty area with the crazy melted rock look. No plants or anything. Just rock and sand. Monsoon time. Raining cats and dogs just pouring so hard you could barely see going 20 miles per hour. Thunder and lightning just rocking the car. Sometimes turning into hail and pounding you. Just a nasty storm. Came around the corner. And the whole countryside legit on fire. Like 20 feet tall flames. Hundreds of yards in all directions while pouring rain at dusk. Just rocks and dirt wildly on fire in the pouring rain. Just slowly drove on. Was totally freaky and surreal. Honestly thought I may have hallucinated it. Checked the news. A propane truck slid off the road going way too fast and apparently busted open pretty violently and lit on fire. Never saw the truck. Must have been behind something. Felt a bit bad after about not stopping. Don't feel bad. I would not stop for flames in a rainstorm. Especially in Skinwalker country. Besides, there really isn't much you could have done. I bet. Not a truck driver, but I have one weird story from when I was a kid. My parents always took us on long road trips every summer and my dad liked to take meandering routes through rural towns to see all the tourist traps. One trip, we passed through a little town in Illinois. The kind you miss if you sneeze. This one had mannequins. Every house and business was only populated by mannequins. I don't remember seeing any people. Everything looked maintained and clean. So someone was at least caring for the place. There weren't any signs or anything indicating it was for tourists. Just a convenience store / bait shop with a sign reading "Eat here. Get worms." A good buddy of mine is a long haul trucker for my company. A few months ago, he woke up in a parking lot surrounded by police. Some dude had gotten shot and dumped 15 feet from his truck. Was he a suspect afterwards? No. It sounded like the police already had a good idea of what happened. He gave a statement saying that he saw nothing. The guy was killed elsewhere and dumped in the parking lot by his truck. That's good he didn't get arrested or anything. My dad drove a truck between Edinburgh and London and tells this story often. He was driving down the motorway and looked to his right. Saw a woman with a "mistrunchable bun," as he describes it, staring at him with a terrified expression from a car next to him. Before he really knows how to react, the car pulls off at the next exit and my dad, although shaken, carries on. About half an hour later, a different car with a different driver pulls alongside my dad, with the same woman in the passenger seat, with the same expression on her face. My dad thinks back, "Fuck this," and plans to pull into the next services to report, as even if it's nothing / misunderstanding. Better to be safe than sorry, right? Anyway, the car disappears before he can get any details. Plates CTC, and he thinks there is no point calling the police with no details, so he carries on driving. Literally about 4 hours later, almost in London, yet another car pulls alongside him with the same woman. Same mistrunchable hair. Same terrified expression. Except this time she appears to be screaming at my dad through the window. So my dad pulls over into a lobby and calls the police. Apparently they have received 3 other calls about the same woman / car in the same area in the last few minutes. It is unfortunately anticlimactic as he never heard anything more about it, but he didn't see her again. And although he kept an eye on the news, didn't see anything about it. Hopefully it's just a giant coincidence. Who knows? The repeating nature of this one reminds me of one weird story back when I was in high school. It was summer and my dad's birthday, so we drove to a casino 2 hours away to watch a boxing match with my uncle. It finishes and we drive back the same night. We are nearing a canyon with no phone reception. So we call my mom and tell her we'll be home soon. Canyon usually takes about 30 minutes with no traffic. It's around midnight. So we enter the canyon and we are all pretty tired. To keep us talking we start telling stories. Most of them creepy stories. This goes on for a while and it feels like time is passing in a haze. We pass this but in the canyon and suddenly I get deja vu. I'm convinced we already passed that before. All of us have driven this canyon 100 times and know the layout. We keep talking and then we pass the same but again. This time I point it out and my dad and uncle notice the time. It's 1 AM and we are still not home. So we all start to get a bit freaked out. We stop talking and just watch the road slowly pass by. Now that we are paying attention though time seems to catch up. We exit the canyon around 1:15 AM and call my mom who is freaked out she hadn't heard from us. We still to this day have no idea where that extra 45 minutes or so went.